About 50 years ago, an astronaut returning from the moon experienced things that he couldn't find a scientific explanation for. So, with some colleagues, he launched a new science focused on the mind and how it works in the body and across space and time. It's the field of Noetics, where the tools of modern science are used to help us understand how what we think and feel affects us and the world around us. Now, this is Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments from the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon.
And you are listening to Noetic Moments, the show that explores what consciousness is, what it does, how it works, and how our lives could be very different if we understood it fully. I am Ruth Miller, a longtime student of consciousness, cybernetics, and culture, and through this series of programs I'm introducing some of the people whose work has defined this field of research, and I'm explaining some of their ideas and their experiments. I'll also explore relevant news items and answer questions that you send to my email address, ruth@noeticmoments.org. Over the course of these programs, we've learned that although the medical world defines consciousness as what we're aware of now, most of what goes on in the mind is not in our conscious awareness at all, but goes on in unconscious processes. From Jung and Freud and other early researchers, we learned that our minds can be thought of as having three aspects. What we are aware of, usually called the conscious mind. What we aren't aware of, that keeps our bodies going and includes our fears and beliefs about threats and dangers, which is the subconscious mind. And what we aren't aware of that connects us and guides us in our actions, the individual superconscious mind. We then learned that we can change our state of consciousness and shift what aspects of mind we're aware of and what we're capable of. From neuroscientists, we learned that the brain modifies whatever it receives from both the body senses and the mind to fit past patterns of experience, following Begg's principle that neurons that fire together wire together and form what's called the default network in the brain. All this means that we see and we hear and we feel what we expect to or believe we will experience. We also learned that while it's possible to say where in the brain various processes are active, no one has yet been able to pinpoint where memories are stored or how ideas and thoughts are formed among the cells. We then saw that many responses in our body happen faster than nerve impulses or chemicals can travel through the body, and often happen before we're aware of it. As a result, many scientists have come to accept that what we call mind is not the product of the electrochemical activity of the brain, but is in fact the activity of a field that surrounds and permeates the whole body. The brain, then, is best understood as a receiver-transmitter, receiving messages from the mind and transmitting them to the body, and receiving messages from the senses and transmitting them to the body and the mind. Some experiments have demonstrated that a person's mind continues to perceive and process for as much as several hours, even when the brain and heart are flatlined, and the person has been declared dead. Mind, then, is a field, a pattern of energy that exists regardless of whether the body is functioning. It permeates and develops with the body and the brain as it is told by the senses through the brain what the world out there is like. This field that we call mind appears to be at least partly electromagnetic because it's possible to measure electromagnetic activity for several inches and even several feet around the body. And some researchers and teachers of ancient traditions, who we call shamans, say that that field looks like a glowing egg shape, extending from below our knees to a few inches above our heads. Now, every field is a unique pattern of vibration that's different from other fields, and some experiments have demonstrated that minds can vibrate along similar patterns. They resonate with each other. Their bodies, and some of their pets, have been measured as changing when someone they're connected with turns attention their way, even though they can't see or hear them doing so. These experiments help explain how the belief in a treatment can help a patient experience healing and the placebo effect. We've learned that mind affects energy and matter in a variety of other ways as well. For example, in the famous double-slit experiments in quantum physics, the subatomic building blocks of the universe show up as matter or energy, depending on whether a mind is present to observe them. For decades now, individuals have changed patterns of numbers in what should be random grids on their computer screens and printouts, and the collective human mind changes the readouts from random number generators on the network of computers run by the Global Consciousness Project in Princeton. Because of the nature of fields and because of things like the Global Consciousness Project, a growing number of scientists are seeing our individual mind as part of a larger field, what Jung called a collective consciousness, Teilhard de Chardin called a noosphere, and others call a global brain. And more scientists are equating mind with the quantum or zero-point field out of which all matter and energy arises. Some calling it the Akashic field, using the Sanskrit term for the essence of everything that exists in the material world. We've heard from researchers who are using the equations of quantum mechanics, relativity, and computer learning algorithms to describe the role of the mind in the formation of matter. With these understandings, we could understand more fully the popular ideas about consciousness, including the law of attraction, how the world around us mirrors what our consciousness is focusing on, accessing information in the quantum Akashic field through insight, intuition, and channeling. We also learned about dreams and their effect on the body and consciousness, and how music affects the brain and body and our connections with other minds. And we've learned about how our state of consciousness affects the healing process and how we can enhance or slow down healing through our thoughts, emotions, and visualizations. How remote viewing works and how we can get into a state of flow in which the mind and the brain are in sync and maximizing our effectiveness. You can catch up on our past shows on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where you'll also find links to the clips, books, and authors that I mention. Well, a few weeks ago, we explored some of the ways that mind influences matter, as we talked about how matter and energy show up in quantum physics, and how the Global Consciousness Project affects computer outputs. And we talked about the fact that molecular action in the body changes according to the thoughts and emotions registered in the brain. In one show, we even talked about some of the experiments about mind and matter described in the book Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain by Ostrander and Schroeder. Today, I want to go a bit further and look at some of the other ways that people use thought and feeling to alter the state of material objects around them. Generally, the ability to do this is called telekinesis. Tele is from the Greek, referring to across distance, and kinesis, from the same root as kinetic, meaning movement. It's also called psychokinesis, psyche meaning mind. Here's a clip from one of America's leading researchers on the subject.
In some ways, studies are boring because they're an accumulation of millions of trials of data to get the reliability. For example, the first time I went to the lab at Princeton, they had a fountain bubbling behind glass, and the fountain, if you keep the water pressure the same, changes column height by random hydrodynamic law. The column keeps changing. And so the instruction was, Joe, keep it high for 15 minutes, make it go low for 15, leave it alone for 15 for control. And I used some of the meditation techniques that Monroe Institute uses. People are familiar with the term aura, kind of a field of energy around you. I put that around the column of water for the high condition. For the lower condition, I imagined my energy being like a Star Wars lightsaber and kept cutting the water with my energy. Of course, you can't touch this. This is, behind glass. This is a mental event. But the score came out, I think, 12.97 on a Z scale, where 1.96 would be only 1 in 100 by chance. So it's exponentially off the charts in terms of that happening just by chance in one trial like that. In the casinos, my favorite thing is to get royal flushes, which is a ace, king, queen, jack, and 10 of hearts, a royal flush and hearts on the poker machines there. We know that's 160,000 won by chance, and I've gone in several times on the first pull. So that's a nice rush of energy when that comes through. We've had somebody have a result on roulette at 1.6 billion to 1 by chance. Those kind of things. Probably, though, the most satisfying is the energy healing things where we see, for example, one fella had foot fungus on his nails for 20 years, and we applied some energy healing to him, and he woke up the next day, his nails completely free of any sign of distress at all. We've had folks report results with cancer, results with burst into tears. One lady, the second day of my workshop, I give a workshop called Inner Vegas Adventure. We've done 99 of them, and we stopped at COVID. We'll probably do our 100th this spring. A woman woke up the second day of that workshop pain-free from post-polio syndrome for the first time in 20 years. And so she was very tearful with joy about the relief of that chronic pain. So we get some pretty dramatic effects. And in manifesting, people winning $1,000 scratch tickets 3 weeks in a row, or finding soulmates, or, getting new jobs, all kinds of things.
Wow. That
I think it's natural. We affect people all the time mentally. If I smiled at you in a store and never having met you, you probably will smile back. I have not touched you or made your mouth go into a shape, but just my emotional state, you seeing that with your eyes, it changes your field, if you will. But if you look at the quantum physics area, and Princeton University had a laboratory called Princeton Engineering Anomalous Research, PEAR. If people look online, they will see the articles in there giving some of the theoretical background of why this might even be necessary to explain quantum physics in terms of how we are in unity with everything and can affect things through our means that would appear to be non-physical now. Other things, like I'm going to show you some of the metal bending. This would never happen by chance. This is the heaviest Oneida steelware. So if I try with my hand to bend the metal, it just won't bend, and I'll leave big marks in my thumb showing the pressure I use.
So you were out of a sci-fi movie, but this is happening.
This is a little harder to see. It's such a tight bend, it actually goes around twice. This, again, is the heaviest Oneida ware. And I've had metallurgists look at that and say it's impossible because the molecule chain in the metal would just cause it to snap if you used a machine to pressurize it. And if you heated it, there would be stress marks from the heat. And when they look at that under electron microscope, it looks different than if you bent it by force. So these would be kind of things that aren't statistical.
That was Dr. Joe Gallenberger speaking. He runs workshops on how to make things happen in the world out there with your mind. And when he spoke of what the metallurgist told him about bending the spoon, it was impossible for the double tight spiral of the handle to happen without changing the molecular structure of the steel, and yet there was no change in that structure. What's really happening here? All those things that he described are happening because of what's going on in one's mind. Now, we've said that mind is a field, a pattern of energy unique to each individual and resonating with other individuals and groups across the planet. What's been implied in most of the research we've cited is that the field is not constrained by space and time, which means it's not constrained by the laws of the space-time continuum. That is, mind is not limited by the laws of physics. So the shape of the spoon, or the cards in one's hand, or the state of some cells in a body, or the amount of money on hand can be changed in ways that are not limited by our material laws. This means that spoon bending, for example, is not a process by which a spoon is slowly bent, but rather a process by which a spoon that was one shape is now another, with no material force applied to make it that way. It also means that a damaged cell, organ, or tissue, or set of cells, organs, and tissues in the body can be treated by stepping outside space and time and beyond the laws of material objects. And, as he cited in the example of the woman who had post-polio syndrome, they can simply be healthy. This is the essence of what is called spiritual, mental, or energy healing. A body that is in one state is experienced in a totally different state without material intervention. So telekinesis, or psychokinesis, is, as Joe Gallenberger said, a natural thing. It's something we all have. Some of us have more talent than others. Some of us have never been told it was possible, so we never even tried, like someone who had never sat down to a piano or picked up a guitar and finds that just naturally they know how to make beautiful sounds happen. We all have that capacity. Some of us are virtuosos, some of us are always a beginner, but nonetheless, it's in us, and it's there for us to use. If you're a part of a spiritualist church, or perhaps a Pentecostal church, or possibly part of what is called New Thought, a center for spiritual living, or unity, or divine science, or even one of the independent New Thought churches like Michael Beckwith's Agape Center in L.A., you will find people who are trained to enter into a state of consciousness in which they know that what was doesn't necessarily have to be what is. And so they hold that knowing, and the people around them experience shifts from one state of being to another. That's a huge part of what New Thought is all about. Well, if you just tuned in, you are listening to Noetic Moments, the show that explores what consciousness is, what it does, and how our lives could be better if we understood it more fully. I am Ruth Miller, and that sound tells me we need to look at a book and what else is going on in the world today, and what you, the listeners, let me know you're curious about. The book today is a resource to help us understand how telekinesis works and how we can develop that skill. We'll look at Marie Silva's very complete guide for people seeking to develop this skill. Some of you may recognize the name Silva because her father was the creator of the Silva mind control method, which was very popular in the 1970s for people wishing to break free of the cultural trance and become active co-creators in their lives, and is currently being made available by the Mind Valley Institute. And there are many ways to access the Silva mind control information on the internet. Now, Marie's book is called Telekinesis, A Guide to Moving Objects and Psychic Energy Manipulation for Beginners. It's copyright 2022. The contents are really quite good. There's the usual introduction. Chapter 1 is Telekinesis Basics, talking about the history, how it was used in ancient times and modern times, and what a scientific view of telekinesis might be. Then Chapter 2 is Motivation and Meditation, the importance of self-belief and intention. Why should you learn telekinesis? The importance of meditation in the development. Chapter 3 looks at breathing techniques, providing exercises in pranayama from yoga. and the different channels that prana happens in the body. Prana being that life energy that in China and Japan has the name of qi or ki. Chapter 4 is the preparatory visualization and meditation process. How to meditate for relaxation, how to prepare for meditation, how to begin to visualize, and the relationship between visualization and telekinesis. Chapter 5, the concentrate. Why concentration is vital when learning telekinesis. And then she offers the description of Trataka meditation and its benefits. Then chapter 6, you and the object are one. Identifying the target object, being one with the object. Now, you may recall in the clip we heard where he extended what he called his aura around the fountain that he was holding at a certain level and felt it as being held there. Chapter 7, exercises with psi balls, how to create a psi ball and the major functions and how to use the psi ball and move objects. Chapter 8, exercises with the psi wheel, how to make a psi wheel, how does it work, how to move the psi wheel. Chapter 9, even more telekinetic exercises. Chapter 10, Telekinesis Training Guide, a 30-day guide at the back of this book, and conclusions and other books by Marie Silva. In the introduction, she says, telekinesis is definitely an exceptional ability. It is so mysterious that you might be wondering if this is something that humans can really do. You may ask yourself if it is indeed a skill you can master, or only a work of fiction. And then she goes on to say, anyone interested can learn the steps it takes to master telekinesis. The most crucial step to take is to start believing that you are capable of doing it. And isn't that how it is with all of these skills and techniques that we have talked about? Our belief that we can is fundamental. So this book is Telekinesis, a guide to moving objects and psychoenergy manipulation for beginners. It's by Marie, M-A-R-I, Silva, and it's available in all the usual places. And of course, I will have a link when we get it up on the archives. Today's news is related to what I talked about in our last show when I was talking about my experience traveling in the UK and seeing all the wonderful ways that human consciousness overall is clearly rising above the normal levels of 40 to 50 years ago. In today's news, we're seeing people step up to do all kinds of things that were not even thinkable in the past. I'm not talking about demonstrations, and I'm not talking about writing letters, and I'm not talking even about running for office, although I'm fascinated to see who is feeling like they can run for office now that didn't even consider the possibility in the past. What I'm talking about in this marvelous increase in humanity's consciousness is the fact that more and more businesses and more individuals are saying the autocratic, top-down, hierarchical, the guy on top tells us all what to do, and we do it the way he says it, model is dying rapidly. Everywhere I look. People are breaking away from it to start their own businesses. People are breaking away from it to develop alternative structures for their businesses. People are breaking away from that model, which was part of what I call empire culture, established about 6,000 years ago, into a much more cooperative, collaborative, individualistic, and yet mutually supportive model of getting things done, of supporting oneself economically, and being in working relationships. This is a huge step. And if you look at any indicator in the way of employment indicators, in the way business texts are being published and the things that are happening online, if you look any of the social media, you will see, even though the major media still wants us to believe that something else is happening, that in fact, humanity as a whole is turning away from the idea that there's some guy in charge and we all have to do what he says. It's fascinating. Humanity is growing up into a whole new way of being, and it's so much fun to watch. Well, that's it for today's show. We are out of time for today, but remember, you can continue the exploration on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where there is a list of the titles and other resources we refer to on the show, along with each of the archived past shows, and where you can always send me your comments and questions, which I will do my best to get answered the next time we're on the air. For now, thanks for joining me here on Noetic Moments, recorded in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon. And have a wonderful week.
You've been listening to Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments. This program is produced in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in beautiful Florence, Oregon, supported by you, our listeners. Our theme music is Tumbling Planets, composed and performed by Jeff Lovejoy. To hear this program again or learn more about Noetic sciences, search our website, www.noeticmoments.org.
Hi, this is Ruth Miller again. And I'm just here to remind you that next Saturday, June 10th, from 1 to 4 p.m., I will be leading my class, Beyond Economics, to help us understand how our state of consciousness affects our ability to thrive regardless of the nature of the economic systems and behaviors, the swings going on around us. It's Beyond Economics, 1 to 4 p.m. on Saturday, June 10th, out at the Florence Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Hall, which is at Hasita Center out there by Hasita Road, north of Florence, on 101. I hope to see you there. It's by donation only, and it'll be a lecture and a dialogue. I'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks.